Welcome back, class. Hope you're doing all right. Yesterday we started our review of Cold War and civil rights by diving into 50s consumerism. So make sure you've checked out that and be ready for tomorrow when we talk about the Truman Doctrine and containment. We also start going into our first e-learning assignment, okay? So there's nothing in hand in yet, but please make sure you're keeping up with the content because tomorrow's assignment will have some questions regarding yesterday and today's info. A lot of this does seem familiar because we have talked about it in class before, but we are giving it a second coat of paint. So we're going to talk about our challengers of conformity again, because yesterday we talked so much about like sameness from homes, right, suburbs, to travel, the highway system, the baby boom, right, the franchise. America was starting to be very cookie cutter, and so we use the phrase challengers of conformity. Conformity is to be the same, and so we're trying to challenge that. We're trying to challenge that sameness, and we'll look at a few examples of that. We did this in class, but this magazine really shows us kind of that cookie cutter nature, right? This expected kind of gender role for women as far as being supportive, being complimentary, not really being on their own. We even see that in her conservative nature, her two sweaters, cheering on, not being a participant. And although it's simply a magazine, it does kind of show us a very conservative culture, a a singular idea on maybe gender roles, and how in the 50s this might be our standard, but we start to question it, we start to push it. For example, this guy, right? We had this conversation. What would this magazine be? A lot of people in class said maybe more adult, a men's magazine, maybe a business magazine. But the truth was, this was actually the start and rise of Playboy magazine. This is Hugh Hefner. And no, Playboy wasn't just notable for its risque images, pushing the boundaries of what visually was accepted, but also its written work, right? Having many liberal, as we put it, or kind of new thoughts and ideas featured in it in a written form from such voices like Jack Kerouac, who we talked about, was a beat he wrote on the road, to guys like Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels. Sorry, Joseph Heller wrote Catch 22. And Kurt Vonnegut, who, of course, writes Slaughterhouse Five, Cat's Cradle, a whole bunch of other kind of exploratory works that try to get people's minds working different ways. Another example we talked about as far as a challenger would be in baseball. This is the 1946 Brooklyn Dodgers, and just kind of take them on in, right? And let's compare that to the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers. And hopefully, the thing that you notice is a little different is right here we have the first African American in Major League Baseball, Jackie Robinson. And boy, oh boy, did he have to face heavy resistance to be that first person pushing for a new look baseball, breaking down the color. This is a trailer you can watch in the uploaded version of the document. So we're seeing challenges in maybe how people can look, what you see in magazines, challenges to sports. And a good example of what this looks like in terms of the written word comes in the form of the beats. Now, in class, we read a part of On the Road. If you click on this link, there's a little article in here describing the feelings and thoughts of what we call the Beat generation. This is what On the Road, Jack Kerouac would all be a part of. So make sure you open this up and give this a read. It's a very short little piece, like how it compares this idea of first thought is the best thought. That's a real good comparison to that notion we read earlier, the accepted 50s mindset of Think first, then act. Well, this is really quite the opposite. Now, we also talked, of course, about the challenge in music. This is Elvis Presley and the rise of rock and roll, getting people to kind of accept not rebellion in such a political sense, but accept rebellion in maybe the forms of what your parents want you to do. And although these might be maybe small acts of rebellion, we are seeing in the 50s not everyone accepting the cookie cutter culture. It is the rise of counterculture movements. And Elvis Presley, in the way he dances and sings and pillages from the blues, is really an example of that. This video here you can watch once you open up the presentation gives you a nice little walkthrough of the rise of rock and roll. So tomorrow we'll talk more of Cold War issues, Truman Doctrine and containment, and we'll also have our first assignment posted on Schoology tomorrow. So let me know what questions you have, and I'll talk to you then.